All right. Hello, everyone. We apologize. We were a little late. We had some connection issues, but we are here. We are excited to be discussing today's topic, that is data access in Entity Framework Core. As always, we meet once a month. We talk about XAF, we talk about XPO, we talk about Entity Framework Core, we talk about AI, we talk about Azure, and we talk about what the Developer Express team is doing. We talk about our personal projects, and we enjoy this greatly. I was actually seeing a message that Meetup just here saying like how probably are that you will be still using Meetup in 6 months. It's like I'm pretty sure we're gonna be still doing this 2 years from now because we enjoy it. It's a way that make us keep on the latest to make us discussing. So thanks always for keeping showing up, for keeping us engaged. And before we get started, I want to mention, of course, I'm always a big XPO advocate. We had a XPO video about data access in XAF, about this type of ORM related performance consideration that we have to have with N+1, with loading more data than we should. And this is a video that we did in conjunction with the Developer Express team in 2020, Hoch. So it has been 5 years already.
Yeah.
So, but I always come back to it. I think that is a really good learning material for learning the ins and out, not only of XPO, but of an ORM. ORM is one of those things that either you love it or hate it, and we do love it. I think that it gives us the possibility to do things fast, and of course, there are some scenarios that we need a really uh, extremely well performance app in some screen. We need to,
Mhm.
well, in that case you can actually even go to the layer of the database and you do your queries by hand, and both ORM allow you to do that. So without further ado, I will let Hoche take over. He has a really nice repo and sample repository that is already public that you guys can review, and let's get started.
Okay. So, hi everyone. My name is Jocho Head. I guess if you join the meeting often, like you know me already. So today, what we're going to do is a demonstration on how the ORMs load the information. So, Javier, I don't know if you can post the article in the
Yes.
from my blog in the chat so everyone can see it. And we will start discussing some design choices first. So let me start sharing my screen. I'm on the road right now, so I'm not at home. I'm using the portable monitor and the laptop, which feels strange after having like huge monitors at home. So let's see. Let's see if I can manage with small screens. Okay. Um, Javier, can you confirm that you're seeing the studio right now? Okay,
I am. I'm
so
sorry, Hosh, I was on
yeah,
mute. Yeah, I am
you're,
seeing the screen. And for
yeah.
everyone who is here, I'm always excited to see so many familiar XAFers, but also new ones. And there we changed to this webinar type of meetings in Zoom. We have now a Q&A section, so you have the chat that you can always interact, but I like the Q&A because we go on, if there are some comments, we go and check the Q&A and we can mark, okay, we are ready to respond this question. So feel free to use it. And of course, also if you have a really interesting project or a really interesting experience or something that we are not covering, please let us know. We're happy to see it. All right, Jose, go for it.
Okay. Yeah, so the first thing that we're going to discuss is today is we're going to talk about Entity Framework Core, which is a little bit of change because we always talk about XPO. Entity Framework Core is like a really modern framework, and it has a lot of control methods that you can use to explicitly say how you're going to load your data, which is one of the biggest demons that happens in the ORM world, I would say. Since most of the time we use XPO, people associate, okay, this data loading problem is XPO related, but no, you will have it in Hibernate, in Entity Framework Core, every possible ORM. has this like design flaw because it tries uh, to reduce the possible next queries, right? So the first thing that we're going to do today is to see the entity classes that we have and how they are structured and how they will affect when we load the data. So for the example, we have this um, is a blog post with comments and tags. So just let me want to close some things. Okay, so we have the master class, have the post collections of the blog. When you use some design like this, you should use queries for these two, and we make queries deeper for the others that are related. So then we have the comment. You can see like kind of really flat, just with reference to the post. Then the post. So same ID, content, and reference to the blog. So kind of like a master detail structure. And in the context, this context is kind of really simple. We just have sets for the entity mentioned before. Um, and in this case, I'm showing you the context that we have in the test project, but context is actually the same. The test project, I switch it to, so there will be no on what you see. That's the stuff so far. So let's this time see uh, mm, and see the data. I uh, so just from,
Oche, it's breaking out a lot. Maybe turn off the camera to see if improve a little bit.
uh, let's see. Okay, let's see. I hope now with the camera off, but if not, I will try to switch connection. Okay, so this is the structure that we have. First, we have the blog. Uh, 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 each tags. So it's kind of a normal structure in this application. Master detail, and after that, uh, let me because I want. I need to run this or this one. What I'm to show you is that getting N plus doing and solutions. This is what we always make. This is implicit problem on the ORMs, which is it's kind of really simple to go through the property tree and say like invoice dot customer dot category is just is less than one single line, right? You can access many entities in less than one single line of code. But to do that, you will trigger queries every time that you do dot and you get a property. So, okay, so this is what I wanted to show you. I will put this in the other screen. And here I have the possible test cases. The first one that I'm going to show is the most common case that you load a collection, and then every time you touch the sub-objects, it will create a new query. So we're going to show the n+1 problem with lazy loading. So for this, I prefer to show the console here. Because here you will see the output, and just let me put a breakpoint in the controller. So let's see. Ejemplos from problem. So many breakpoints. Let's put this one here. Okay, so let's start this on the side, and on the other side, I'm going to put the console. If I can find it, this one. Okay, so there you go. Well, now I'm going to move this. It's really hard to work with a small monitor. So, okay. So the first thing that we're going to do is to clear the console to show the first query. Let's see. The breakpoint here. Okay. So and we're going to do a for each, and in the for each to account for the post. So right now we did one trip to the database, and when I move to the next query, it's going to do a query each time we touch any of the posts, so or the post collection. So one query, two query, three is there are six blocks. So this is going to do that for each of the blocks that we have. So as you can see, it did separate queries for each of the entities. First for the blocks, and then for each sub collection of posts, it did a query. So this seems kind of fast right now, but it looks fast because I'm using a development environment. And this is kind of the most common problems that you say, okay, it runs faster. I don't need to improve my design. Everything is cool. But no, it's usually not like that, because in real production scenarios, maybe your database server is not hosted in the same place where your application is running. So depending on how long is that distance, these queries can be like really, really super slow. So you want to try to avoid to do this initial query and then all of these other queries. So let's continue with this. I will put back the studio here. So this is the code that created this problem. And as you can see, the first thing that we do here, we obtain the context, and then we're going to loop to the blocks. This doesn't bring any subqueries. It's this part that brings the subqueries, which is every time that we do post count, is going to do a query for that collection with a filter. So this is what I was talking about when you say like you are in one entity and you do like dot post, dot count, or dot whatever. Every invocation of a property or a collection there. So this is the most common case, I will say. And then the thing is that as soon as you start doing subqueries or touching the property trees, you're going to have like the same problem. So we can see here another example. This is an alternative example of what we had before, but it will create the same type of scenario, which is we obtain the blocks first as a list, and then when we iterate, and then when we query, it's going to make another subquery for this case, right? So let's run this one. Let me find my SAF application here. So we're going to do the alternative version of this, which gives kind of the same type of problem. So I'm going to move the studio outside so I can run it, because the important thing for you to see is the console. This is going to be a little abstract, Mira, because you will have to see the console a lot for this, for make sense out of this. So let's run the alternative one. Okay, so we did the first query from blocks, and we loaded 6 blocks. So let's continue. So see, every time that we touch any of the properties in the property tree, it creates another query. And in general, this is what you want to avoid, because the trick in here is to reduce the amount of trips that you might do in when you're going to process objects, basically, because uh, you want to bring everything in one single trip if it's possible. So you want to avoid this to do all these subqueries, right? So let's move back here. There are many ways that we can create that problem. So now let's see the possible ways to fix it. So we have 3 possible ways to fix it. We have eager loading. We can do multiple includes, or we can do projections. So let's start with the easiest one to understand, which is the eager loading. So let me move again the studio here, and let's find that action. So eager loading action here, and the execute is here. So in Entity Framework Core, since they have like this fluent syntax, it's kind of really easy to do something like eager loading. In XPO, it's also possible. You just do it in a different way. The main difference is that Entity Framework Core is really integrated with Microsoft infrastructure. So the Lambda part, where you can include Lambda and extensions for the framework, is, I mean, they're in the same box, basically. With Developer Express, the design from XPO, even though it's a design that I love a lot because it's only 3 layers, is kind of like a old school design. So you can do all these type of controls, but it takes it's a different approach, basically. In here, you will feel like you're doing just a link query. So it feels more part of the query, like you're optimizing a query, than in XPO. So I guess Javier will not be happy with that sentence. So the trick here is that when you load the blocks, you do an include method to load all the possible sub collections on the same trip. What this is going to do is going to create only one single query for both entities. So you already um, reduce the amount of queries because this is a single trip. So let's try to run this one. And is here. Let's see the console. Now, as you can see, there is a join in the query. This is way more efficient. It's just one single trip. What can make this query inefficient is if you have the wrong indexes, if you're not querying by something that is well, basically, if you're not querying by a primary key or something that is not indexed. But since these are primary and foreign keys, it's going to create a join. And this one will bring everything in one single query C. Now, it executes almost the same code as all the other 2 methods, but it was just one query. In the other cases, like 7 or 8 queries. So see how much this can improve um, the performance. Uh, from the first case, it reduces like 7 queries, I think. So in local environments, when you measure this time, it will not look like it's something really important because you have the database in the same computer, right? But once you're using remote databases, that's where when you start seeing like the real benefit of this. Let's continue. I want to show that this method finish, see, is done. There is like the breakpoint pass. So just doing this include reduce the amount of queries because it got everything in a single query here. So, okay, now let's see another case of this. And let me bring the browser back. We can do this in many ways. So let's see which one is the second one that is easier to understand, because I wanted to show them from the most simple to the most complex. So let's see, maybe let's do the include, will be nice to see. Okay, so let me put a breakpoint. So we're going to do this one. Okay, so let's hit it. We have the breakpoint here. So as you can see, this one is doing something like a little bit different. Uh, this one is going to load the blogs, include the post, and then after the posts are loading, it's going to include the comments. So let's see the query that is created. So let's go to the console. And let me try to finish the method so we can see the full execution. See, this got 3 levels because we're getting the blog with the post and the comments on the same query. So let's see is this part. The query is a little bit more complex, but is really optimized for speed. And again, it's a single trip. In all these techniques, what we're trying to do, the main goal is to reduce the trips. Uh, when you have reduced all the trips and to the minimum, which is usually one, well, it has to be one. Then what you need to take care is how much data are you loading, right? If the collections are really big, maybe you don't need all the data or something like that. So that's a different case, right? But in this occasion, what we're trying to show is to reduce the amount of trips to the database. So in here, we got 3 levels, 3 entities, and just a single query, in the opposite of the first case that I showed. And here in the console, we can see all the output with the count. So this is way more, one query for the blogs, one query for the post, and one query for the comments. So let's finish this one, and then let's find another case that will be um, easy to understand. Let me move the browser, and let me find another case. Javier, I don't know if there is like a question on the chat or something. If anyone has any doubt, just let me know. I see that Paul is here, so maybe Paul will doubt my code, but I always appreciate his advice. So let's see the next case. The next case is a little bit more complicated. We're going to use, no, this one, we're not going to do projections. That's kind of too complex right now. What we're going to show right now is the split version. So let's see, let me find the browser. So the next case is going to be, where is here? A split. And let me put the breakpoint. So let's run this one. And let me show you the code. So in here, again, we started from the root entity, these blocks. Then this is going to do as a split query, and it's going to execute a query for each of them. So this, if I remember well, is going to bring 3 queries. It's going to do it in 3 queries. So let's run this. and let's show the console. So yes, see, you have a single query at the beginning for the blocks, and then separate queries for the sub entities. So there are many ways that you can optimize your design. So you will have to you need to test your own use cases. I did the most common scenario, which is uh, one root object with two collections at the same level, and then one of those collections has like a deeper collection. So as you can see, here is different. We have not reduced the amount of trips. It's shorter than the first case that we show. But this will execute in basically three different queries, right? So it's not so much that that this will improve the speed. This is something like doing in parallel, basically. That's the idea of the split query. So any questions so far? No, everyone is understanding everything. That's cool. Okay, so let's continue with this. So let's go back to the Blazor application. And we're going to do another case. We have done eager loading. We have done split queries. Let's see. We have done multiple includes and then include. So I guess the next one will be like projection. So let's check the projection and put the right breakpoints. 1 second. Okay, so let me put the breakpoint for the projections. Okay. Okay, so this is a little bit more complex because what we're doing is we are creating an anonymous type by doing projection, which is doing select from what a query will bring. And then we do the same scenario where like, we look through this data and we write it in the console. So basically here we are flatten the relationship to put it like a single result. And let's see how that goes on the console. So let me put the console here and continue. So here it created also a single query. And see, you have almost all the same information here. So the idea was sometimes you don't need, I was talking about that a little bit before, is sometimes you don't need to bring all the columns from from a type. In before in XPO and in Entity Framework, not the normal one, not the Entity Framework core, once you load an entity, a type, you will have to load all the columns for it. But if you use projections, you can basically take some of the properties that you want. Imagine that you have a binary property, a binary column, which is something like a file attachment in this case. And you don't want to include it because you really don't need it in the data that you're going to process. So in that case, if you want to bring that entity and not bring that column, you can use a projection and you can just select the columns that you want. And that will do basically the trick. It will exclude some of the properties and it will include other properties from the subtypes, depending on your design, basically. But as you can see in this case, is a single query again. So it's one single trip to the database, and it does like everything that we need to do in like a single shot. That's what we are aiming for, like to reduce the amount of trips and to reduce the amount of this in different to the other cases. This will reduce the amount of data that you're bringing to the application. So it's even more efficient, I would say. Let's see if the other cases that we have, I guess we have projection, split query. So we only have like filter include to test because explicit loading is just it's not so interesting, but let's see the filter include. Let me find the code in the other screen and put the breakpoint. Here. And let me show you a bit the code because before I execute it. So in this one, we're going to do a mix because usually you don't want to bring all the all the data. Most of the time, you'll have some type of parameters to filter the query. So this one is that case. So it's a mix of cases because as you can see in here, we're using include again, but for the post, we are doing using a where clause to not include all of them. Just we need from some date on. So let's execute that one and let's see which type of query we create. So filter include. Let's finish this one. Let's see the console. Again, a single query. So if you do it like um, in this way, you are going to reduce the queries because in the original case, what we did, or the most common case that we found in code is something like this. Let me show you. Yeah, it's something like this that you load the blocks, and after that you will do some filter for the post after loading the blocks. But if you do it at the same time with the lambda expression, that will reduce the query. That's our goals so far. So we only have like one more case to show. Uh, and I invite you to download this repository and to try it yourself because it's like not super exciting code, right? It's not AI like everyone like we have done in the other previous meetings. That everyone's like super excited about AI. You're seeing just here like a black console with like a strange query, right? So it's not super excited, but this is really useful when you have an application in production and then you don't know why it's loading slow. And if you can fix it with this code, will be great. That's the goal here, that to share the knowledge how you can improve your applications. So let's see, we only have one more case to show. Explicit loading. So let's find the method and put the breakpoint. Just 1 second. Okay, so let me show you the code. So in this one, um, what we're explicitly loading is the post. Again, we get the blocks in the first query, and then we loop through the blocks, and then we say, okay, from this block, sorry, get me this post, and then you do load for that collection. So let's see what query this generate. Let's go and see it in the console. This is also really short. So you have the block. Let's see. Oh, in here it didn't trigger because I didn't, um, I didn't put, I didn't access any of the other properties. So that's why it's only one query showing. And those are all the possible cases that you can use to solve the loading part of the data. And regarding how you can create this problem, there are billions and billions of permutations. And as I told you at the beginning, the most common one is just going through the property tree, doing dot something in the collections, or through the navigation properties. So that's everything that I have for this demonstration. Javier, I don't know if you want to show something, or JP, you're always welcome to join us if there is any observation on my humble demonstration today.
So basically, the only thing that I want to add, Hoche, was the same comments that we did with XPO. We have access to intersect the query at any time and change the behavior. If it's loading too much data, we always say if our devs had to, for each window, for each screen, have to do the query by hand, they will think it twice before doing invoice.country.address.zip code.
Yeah, if you
Anything
have to
else.
write the SQL query for that and pass the parameters, you will not do it like that. You will get
You
that
will,
huge
you
one right.
exactly. So same thing as with XPO, you are able to either load in your data, you are able to only bring the data you need, only the columns that you need. In a case that you definitely need to do SQL query, you are able to actually execute the query directly to your database provider. So you have choices here. That's the main goal. Entity framework, one thing that I like is that you can actually even put a message in the log so you know, okay, this query comes from when I did this part on the code. So that's something really, really beautiful. Besides that, is again getting the repo in your side, playing with it, send us questions as always, and start playing with it. At the end, as we always say, XAF is regular .NET apps, so Entity Framework by itself is a whole world, XPO by itself, those are two RMs. You just need to learn how everything is working under the hood, and you should be able to make your XAF app really performant. So, kudos to the Entity Framework core team. They have done a really good work in the latest version, and still XPO, but definitely I will support Entity Framework. I will give them praise for what they have done, and will continue working.
Yeah, and here just before we close this meetup, I want to say that there is one thing that I'm in the XPO team. You know me, I'm in the XPO team, but there is one thing about Entity Framework Core that it feels really natural because in Entity Framework Core, in XPO before you can in XPO before before the lambda expression came into the picture, that was Net Framework 3, you have to use criterias. And here I don't know how the community feels, if they prefer to use criterias or lambda expressions. The lambda expressions, it feels like you have more control. That's what you feel in like in Entity Framework. I felt it when I was writing this demo that since in Entity Framework, the only way that you have to query is lambda expressions, then you feel more familiar by adding the extension like include this and that. In XPO, you do a criteria by text, and you feel like you don't have that granular control. That's kind of the main difference for me right now at the moment. Even though in XPO, I don't use criteria by text anymore or by creating by
Yeah,
binary
that
operation, blah, blah, blah. I
we
do
we
the
are
lambda expression.
yeah, Ocho, we're mentioning this because we have been using XPO for a long time and we learned the criteria. We started with criteria. That was
Mhm.
actually criteria came before Link in .NET 3.5,
They
something like
invented
that.
that, basically. Mhm.
So if you think about that, right now in XPO, and let's forget SAF, in XAF we have object space first or default, and you can pass
Mhm.
your lambda and so on. You have criteria operator from lambda, and you can pass your lambda right there when you're doing a criteria.
Mhm.
But in your session, in XPO session, you have session.query, and you can pass your lambda.
Mhm.
So right now you can stay in that world in that field control. I'm pretty sure that all XAFers will have criteria in text in their apps because we do as well for a long time. So, but
See
as you,
the comment. There's a
yeah,
comment.
yeah, you feel a little bit of like, but basically right now everyone who is starting is fine. They can use criteria lambdas right away. I think that we have a question, Jorge. Let me take a look.
It's not a
So,
question.
Jean Paul say XP Holanda sucks. I think that that's debatable, and and definitely I have to add for new developers a way that auto completion that also always
Mhm.
helping. That always will help. That always give you what they want. So we need to start somewhere. All right, guys. Any other questions? Any other comment? If not, we're gonna finish for this month. Hoch, at the beginning we was breaking a little bit. I wanna see the video later to see if that on the video,
Mhm.
because the connection was breaking. So if not, we'll do a quick video going to over all of this, because I think that this is really good information. As always, I'm amazed to see so many of you keep showing up with us and taking like 1 hour, 2 hour of your Thursday to discuss about XAF stuff and the framework. I'm really excited. Jean Paul, you're always welcome. I really appreciate you having here. And see you guys next month. Well, I think that there is another
So,
question. Wait. Ah,
no, it's not Japón.
Jean Paul. I will do that research, Jean Paul. I will let you know. All right. All right,
See you
guys.
guys.
See
Take
you next
care.
month.